How could you allow them to take him away? He finally asked, his voice trembling. Lilian didn't answer at first. She blinked hard and whispered, David, he deserved what he got. David shook his head slowly. No, Mom. He doesn't. What's the difference between what he did to you and what you're doing to him now? Now listen, Mom, if you don't release him, I will walk out of your life and you never see me again, never. And with these words, Dr. David walked out.
Dr. David stood frozen in the hallway of Daniel Memorial Hospital. He watched helplessly as two police officers wheeled his father away on a stretcher. Mr. Benson looked pale and weak, an oxygen mask covering half of his face. The handcuffs jingled as they pushed him down the corridor. His eyes met David's for a moment, full of pain, fear, and something deeper. Regret, maybe. David swallowed hard. His heart was heavy, his hands clenched into fists. Down on her knees in the hospital hallway, Nurse Deborah held Lilian's hand tightly. Tears streamed down her cheeks. Please, Ma, she cried, looking up at Lilian. Forgive my father. He's not well. Don't let them take him away. He might not survive it. Her voice cracked with every word, her heart begging for mercy. But Lilian, standing tall in her black dress, looked away coldly. She didn't speak. Her face was blank like stone. She turned around and walked out of the hospital, her heels clicking on the tiles, ignoring Deborah's sobs that echoed through the hallway. Back at home, the atmosphere was tense. The living room was quiet, too quiet. The lights were soft, and a family photo of Dr. David as a boy hung on the wall behind them. Lilian sat on the couch with her arms crossed, staring at the floor. David stood in front of her, his jaw tight. He couldn't believe what had just happened. How could you allow them to take him away? He finally asked, his voice trembling. Lilian didn't answer at first. She blinked hard and whispered, David, he deserved what he got. David shook his head slowly. No, Mom. He doesn't. What's the difference between what he did to you and what you're doing to him now? Now listen, Mom, if you don't release him, I will walk out of your life and you never see me again, never. And with these words, Dr. David walked out. The silence between them was louder than words. The next morning, sunlight poured into Dr. David's office, casting golden stripes on the marble floor. He sat behind his beautiful polished mahogany desk, staring out of the window. The city outside was alive, cars moving, people walking, but inside, he felt numb. His thoughts were spinning. He thought about the hospital, the police, his mother's silence. The truth about Mr. Benson being his biological father hurt more than he imagined. It wasn't just about the past anymore. It was about who he was. Every part of him felt torn. He didn't know where to place his anger, or his love. A gentle knock pulled him out of his thoughts. Come in, he said. The door opened slowly. Deborah stepped in, her eyes red and swollen. Behind her was her mother, Auntie Nora, her face pale with grief. Without saying a word, Deborah dropped to her knees. Please, Dr. David, she cried, he's the only thing that matters to me. I know what he did was wrong. But please, talk to your mom. He's sick. He might die. We are begging you. Tears rolled down her cheeks and dripped onto the floor. Auntie Nora stepped forward, her hands shaking. My son, she said softly, I swear I didn't know about what happened until now. I never would have let this happen. Please. I'm sorry. David felt something inside him crack. The pain, the love, the memories. He stood there, staring at them, unsure if he was still a doctor, a son, or just a broken man stuck between two people he couldn't save. The house felt colder than usual that evening. Dr. David and his mother sat in the same living room, the clock ticking slowly on the wall. No TV. No music. Just silence. Dr. David looked at her again, tired but determined. "Mom," he said, "I'm begging you now. Please release him. For me. You don't have to do it for him. Do it because I'm your son. Because I'm hurting. You have given me life, love and all that I have today, but what's the need of me having all this when the only man I know as my father is lying helpless, sick in the police custody?" Lilian's lips pressed together. Her eyes shimmered, but she didn't blink. For a long time, she said nothing. Just breathed slowly, deeply. Then she looked at David. "You still call him your father?" she asked softly. "Yes," David said. "Because he is. And no matter what he did, he brought me to this world, if that's the only thing he could do. I want to help him survive." Lilian's hands trembled in her lap. Her voice cracked when she finally spoke. "You're all I have, David. If I do this, I'm doing it for you." He nodded slowly. She wiped her face, stood up, and walked to her room. A few minutes later, she came out holding a brown envelope, the release papers. "I'll take them to the police station in the morning," she whispered. And for the first time in days, she looked him in the eye. The police station smelled like sweat and dust. The chairs were old, and the fan above made a soft whirring noise. Lilian sat in the reception hall, holding the release papers tightly. Her hands wouldn't stop shaking. David sat beside her, quiet. He didn't say much, but his presence was like a rock holding her together. The DPO finally walked in. He was a tall man with a serious face. Lilian stood and handed him the papers. "I've signed everything," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Release him." The DPO looked at the papers, then nodded. "We'll bring him out." But just then, a commotion rose in the hallway. A young officer rushed in, breathless. "Sir. The suspect, Mr. Benson, he's collapsed." "What?" David shouted. He jumped to his feet and ran down the hallway with the officers. Lilian followed, her heart pounding in her chest. When they reached the cell, Benson was lying on the cold floor, unconscious. His breathing was shallow. His skin pale like ash. "Call an ambulance," David yelled. "Now." Everything happened so fast, stretchers, shouting, flashing lights. The ambulance took off, sirens wailing. David climbed in, holding the oxygen mask over his father's face. Lilian stood frozen at the station, watching the ambulance disappear into traffic. And for the first time in years, her anger didn't feel heavy. It felt like fear. The hospital hallway buzzed with urgency as Mr. Benson was rushed through the automatic doors of Daniel Memorial Hospital. The sound of squeaky wheels against the tiled floor echoed loudly, blending with the hurried footsteps of nurses and doctors shouting instructions. "Get oxygen. We are losing him," one of the doctors yelled. Dr. David ran beside the stretcher, his coat flapping behind him. Sweat beaded down his forehead. He wasn't just a doctor now. He was a son, desperate and broken. Dad, stay with me," he said, holding Mr. Benson's hand, which was cold and limp. Inside the emergency room, the bright overhead lights felt too harsh. Monitors beeped rapidly. 2 nurses cut open Mr. Benson's shirt and connected him to machines. Another started pressing on his chest. Deborah stood frozen near the doorway, her hands over her mouth, tears streaming down her cheeks. Dr. David stood on one side of the bed, looking down at his father. The man who had caused so much pain, now lying there, helpless. For a moment, Dr. David's hands trembled, but then his training kicked in. "Push 1 milligram of epinephrine," he ordered. He leaned down and whispered, "You're not dying today. Not like this." Mr. Benson's eyes fluttered slightly. He gasped, then fell still again. Panic gripped the room. Everyone walked faster. A nurse looked up and said, "Pulse is weak, but we've got something. Dr. David's shoulders dropped a little. A tiny flicker of hope. Behind the glass, Lilian stood watching. Her face didn't move. No tears. No relief. Just silence. And in that moment, Dr. David realized, saving his father's life wouldn't heal what was broken. But letting him die would only make it worse. The emergency room lights dimmed as Mr. Benson stabilized, but he was still dangerously weak. His blood pressure is crashing again, one of the doctors called out. Dr. David looked at the monitor. His father had lost too much blood. He needs a transfusion. Now, another nurse said urgently, flipping through his chart. We've checked the blood bank, nothing matches his rare type, a nurse added, panic in her voice. All heads turned to Dr. David. He's B negative, the nurse said. Dr. David nodded slowly. Same as me. The room fell into a still silence. He looked through the glass window where his mother stood. She hadn't moved. Her arms were crossed tightly. Her eyes were locked on him. He stepped out, still in his blood-stained gloves. Mom, he said, his voice soft but shaking. Lilian blinked slowly, her face still unreadable. What? He's dying. I'm the only match. And, she replied coldly. I want to donate. I have to. Lilian looked away. After everything he did. After what he did to me, to us. Dr. David's voice cracked. You raised me to save lives, not judge them. I'm not doing this for him. I'm doing it for me. Her eyes welled up, but she didn't let the tears fall. She turned toward the emergency room, her voice barely a whisper. I hate him, David. But I hate the idea of losing you more. There was a long silence. Do what you have to do. Without another word, Dr. David turned and disappeared into the room. As the nurse prepped his arm for the transfusion, Deborah stood in the corner, watching. Her hand pressed against her chest as silent tears rolled down. Inside Lilian's heart, a storm raged. She had let him go once to save her son's peace. Now, her son was giving life to the man who took so much from hers. She whispered under her breath, Don't die. Not yet. Not before I say what's burning in my soul. 6 hours after the transfusion, the monitor beside Mr. Benson beeped gently. His breathing had steadied, his pulse was stronger. Slowly, his eyelids fluttered open. Doctor, he's waking up, a nurse whispered. Dr. David stepped closer, his heart pounding in his chest. Mr. Benson turned his head weakly and looked up at the man standing by his side. A slow recognition filled his eyes, followed by a mix of guilt and sorrow. He lifted a trembling hand, gesturing for Dr. David to come closer. Dr. David leaned in, unsure of what to expect. Mr. Benson's voice was hoarse, barely a whisper. My son. Dr. David froze. Those 2 words shook something deep inside him. I'm sorry, Mr. Benson said. For everything. For not being there. For what I did. I didn't know my actions that night would bring you into this world. Dr. David's eyes filled with emotion, but his face remained unreadable. I was a monster, Mr. Benson continued. I ran from the pain I caused, never realizing the miracle I left behind. You. There was a long silence. The machines hummed gently. Deborah stood quietly in the corner, her hands clenched, her face wet with tears. I don't deserve forgiveness, Mr. Benson added, closing his eyes. But if I die now, I just want you to know. I'm proud of the man you became. You saved me, even when I never gave you a reason to. David's throat tightened. He wanted to speak but found no words. Finally, he placed a hand gently on Mr. Benson's chest. I didn't do it for you, he said softly. I did it because I refused to become you. Mr. Benson's lips trembled into a faint smile. Even better. That means I didn't ruin you. Outside the hospital room, Lilian watched through the glass, her heart heavy. She wiped a tear as she turned away, whispering to herself, he finally sees the son he never raised. And Dr. David. He walked out of the hospital room not with anger, but with something much heavier, understanding. The soft hum of the machines echoed through the room. The scent of antiseptic clung to the air, but it couldn't clean the weight of history that sat between the three of them. Mr. Benson lay still, his eyes heavy with shame. Dr. David stood at his bedside, quiet, emotion bottled up behind tired eyes. Then, the door creaked open. Lilian stepped in. Her heels tapped slowly against the tiled floor. She didn't rush. She didn't tremble. She moved with the quiet force of a woman who had carried pain for too long and was now choosing how to finally put it down. She reached for David's hand and held it firmly. David, surprised, turned to her. She gave him a brief look, steady, knowing, then turned back to the man lying weak before them. Mr. Benson couldn't speak. His lips parted, but no sound came. His eyes glistened. Lilian didn't need his words. She'd heard enough in this lifetime. She stepped closer, locking eyes with him, not as a victim anymore, but as a mother choosing peace for her son. I forgive you, she said, her voice low but powerful. Not for you. Mr. Benson blinked, his throat tightening. Lilian's hand squeezed David's. I forgive you, for him, pointing at Dr. David. She paused, her voice trembling now. So my son doesn't have to carry the weight of a war he never started. A breath escaped Mr. Benson's lips. A silent sob. A lifetime of guilt met with grace he never expected. Lilian stepped back. She looked at Dr. David, gave a single nod, and without another word, turned and walked out of the room, out of the hospital, and into the peace she had fought so long to find. David remained frozen, staring at the door his mother had just exited from, his father's labored breathing behind him, and in that still moment, something shifted. Not everything was fixed. But something had been released. The hospital room was quiet now, no machines beeping urgently, no nurses rushing. Just the soft rhythm of breath and the slow return of life. Mr. Benson lay propped up with pillows, his color no longer as pale. The storm in his chest had calmed, but his heart still carried the weight of everything he had done. Then, the door opened gently. Deborah walked in first, her eyes wide with hope. Behind her, Aunt Nora followed, her steps slow, her hands folded tightly as if holding her emotions in place. Mr. Benson turned his head. For a second, no one spoke. Only their eyes did. Deborah's lips parted in a shaky smile as she stepped closer. Daddy, she whispered, and her voice cracked. You're awake. Mr. Benson nodded weakly. Deborah. Aunt Nora walked closer. She hadn't smiled in days, not genuinely. But now, she looked at him with tears gathering in her eyes and the faintest, most unexpected smile crossing her face. Thank God, she breathed, her voice barely above a whisper. Mr. Benson blinked in disbelief. Nora, you are here. Yes, she said, still staring at him. Not because everything is okay, but because maybe, it can start to be. He looked at her, then at Deborah, and then slowly reached out his trembling hand. Deborah took it instantly, pressing it to her cheek. We are not there yet, Daddy. But, you're still my father. His wife and Nora stood at the foot of the bed, watching him. You almost left without saying goodbye, she said, trying to sound firm, but her voice shook with emotion. That's not how our story ends. Mr. Benson shut his eyes, a tear slipping down. Maybe this wasn't forgiveness. Not fully. But it was a beginning. A crack in the wall. A breath where there had been silence. And sometimes, that's all a broken family needs, to just start breathing again. The room felt warmer now, not from the sun outside, but from something softer, something healing. Mr. Benson looked up as Dr. David stepped in. He looked tired, tired from the long night, tired from the years of confusion, and tired of holding so much inside. But his eyes, they carried something new. Peace, maybe. David walked slowly toward the bed. Deborah and Aunt Nora moved aside, watching him silently. He stopped in front of the man who had given him life, but also given him pain. The air was thick with emotions that hadn't yet found words. Mr. Benson's lips trembled. David, he whispered, I know I don't deserve to ask, but I hope someday you can find it in your heart. David raised his hand, signaling for him to stop. He swallowed hard. His voice was low, soft, barely louder than the hum of the machines around them. I forgive you. Tears gathered in Mr. Benson's eyes. He couldn't speak. His lips moved, but no sound came out. David slowly reached forward and took his father's hand. It was the same hand he had once imagined punching, pushing away, but now, he held it. I forgive you, he repeated, his voice stronger now. Not because it was okay, but because holding on to the pain won't heal me. Deborah placed her hand over Dr. David's. Then Aunt Nora did the same. And just like that, the broken family found themselves holding on to something real, not the shame, not the silence, not the scars, but to each other. In that moment, there were no titles. No judgments. Just people who had suffered, choosing to stand together, one more time. A family. Torn apart by secrets. Brought back by forgiveness. I hope you enjoyed the final part of the story, the dark secret behind her beauty which you have just watched, and if yes, what are the lessons you can craft from the story? Let's discuss them in the comment section. Please don't forget to like my video, share to as many people as possible, also subscribe to support my channel as your subscription means the world to me. Do hit the notification bell to keep you informed when I upload other interesting stories like this. Thank you for watching. Until we meet again, keep watching and stay connected.